Well, hello, it's good to see you.
You too, Stephanie.
So, who are you and why are you here?
Great question. So my name is Pedrom Rejai. I'm here because I have a lot of interest in helping small, medium-sized businesses with their supply chains. I've been with Unilever for the last 11 and a half years and in the supply chain industry for the last 17 or so. I spent a lot of time working in manufacturing, made everything from Dove bar soap to Hellmann's mayonnaise to Norris sauce and side packets, all sorts of different stuff. And for the last 3 to 5 years or so, I've been doing bigger supply chain changes, and now I operate international supply chain. As I've done that, I've started to realize my passion for helping smaller and medium-sized businesses. And so since then, I started mentoring with SKU, which is an early stage startup for founders that are in the consumer packaged goods business. And I very much love that. And so I'm trying to get more involved in that type of community because it gives me a lot of energy, and I want to share my knowledge with lots more people.
I have, this is kind of a politically charged question, but it's one we're all living with right now, which is around tariffs. And there's all this discussion around reshoring manufacturing. And I get that probably a lot of that is more cars and things like that. But I think Kraft just announced a huge investment, but this doesn't happen overnight. And even if it can happen quickly, what I keep thinking about is, again, you're a startup. It's hard enough to find a manufacturing partner, right, that will fit with what you're trying to produce and what you can afford to do. How is this impacting kind of all this talk about reshoring, manufacturing, and tariffs? If I were starting or have a small food business, what coaching would you give me about how to survive all of this and how to think about it? And again, back to like, what are the questions or the red flags, or even what's just out of my control?
Yep. Yeah. So let's start with the last part. We'll work our way back. So what's out of your control? What the tariffs are. Always. It'll be out of my control, probably yours too, but
Yeah.
They're out of most people's control on what the tariffs will be. But what's in your control is understanding the risks of each tariff.
Right.
So is that specific country that you're looking at for an ingredient or sourcing or co-manufacturing, are they currently negotiating with the US government, or are they negotiating with a different government?
And how would you find that out?
The news. Very easy.
Oh God, that's scary.
I know it's scary to read the news sometimes, but if you just go search what's the likelihood of this tariff staying in Europe, let's say, you can start to see some of the trends in the articles and all those types of things. And you can even ask AI to search the news for the last, 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, and you'll start to see some general trends. This is not about finding the exact number. This is about understanding your risk. So if I go to Europe because they have the best olives in the world, but Italy or France or whoever is not going to negotiate tariff changes, then you need to expect that tariff to stay.
Right.
If you are actively negotiating and say, okay, this is the current state, it might change in a year, it might not. We don't know. And you add that in as part of your risk. So the first question we always ask is, what's the risk of respective countries that we want to source from? And then what's the benefit you gain that you can't get anywhere else? For example, olives in Italy are the best in the world. Highest quality. You can't beat them, right? So like there's a flavor.
Is that a fact or is that an opinion?
It's an opinion, for sure, an opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. Not my opinion. Maybe people love Spain more. I don't know. Okay. But I'm not a big olive fan. But there are, I know. But there are some really great stuff that come out of different countries. Where that advantage is there and your consumer is buying that specific offering, you can't compromise. So figuring out where that specific point is really important. An example is we can come back to the tamarind soup that I talked about from the Philippines. The tamarind in the Philippines is fresh. It's grown locally. It's easy to get. They grind it up right there and it goes into the soup. And the knowledge of how to make that soup packet is already there. You know that they're making the formula that everybody in the Philippines loves. So can I pick that up and move it to the US? Sure, I can try. But if that soup packet changes over there, am I going to know to change it in the US? Maybe, maybe not. If the tamarind that I'm getting in the US, is it as fresh as what they're getting in the Philippines? No, probably not. Will it make a difference? I don't know.
Right.
And that's what you have to start to ask about when you're saying, okay, the tariffs are here, but what's the other value you're getting? Because consumers are now expecting you to raise prices because of tariffs and inflation.
Right.
So there is flexibility.
So that brings me to, so I remember as we were kind of coming into the new year and before the inauguration, there was a lot of discussion around all the things that were going to go up in price, right? And you saw a lot of business owners, small and large, sort of buying in advance, trying to get ahead of the increase in goods. And maybe in some cases, even the fear that they wouldn't be able to get the goods at all. And that sounds good in theory, but I see a lot of startups, like packaging is a great example, where they go out and buy a ton of packaging because it's only 5 cents per if I buy this many, and it's 50 cents per if I buy this many. Well, but it's not really the same, right? And so again, it feels a little bit to me like it's similar to the tariff thing, which is, yeah, your price might go up, and you may have to change how you purchase a little bit, but you can't look at things in a vacuum of just that one ingredient or that one tariff, or or even just the stocking up. But also as a smaller manufacturer, again, you should be asking yourself the questions, I think, of what is that thing that's really hard to get? That if I couldn't get it, I couldn't make my product, right?
Right. Where there's no other options.
I used to do a little module for a small, very early stage incubator in Chicago around supply chain. So it was just high level on logistics and so forth. And one of the things I used to always talk about is, we have a tendency to focus on what's nearer or most expensive or dearest to our heart, or in some cases, most important to our recipe. But you have to also look at, like, how long does it take to get something? So you can't just look at your supply chain. To me, is almost like a 3D dynamic, fluid, living thing. That's the way I've thought about it. Does that make sense? Does that feel right to you?
It does. It does. Most people look at a supply chain as like this 2D model of like flow chart in, the manufacturing here and then flow chart out. Which, yes, that's true. But if you really map out everything, it blows up big time. It's like the 1.1 million combinations that the first 5 chess moves can have. Same thing, right? Like you could have so many millions of different combinations coming in and out that it blows up really quickly. So there's no way to like a complex product, let's say, not simple one, a complex product. There's no way to accurately map the whole thing. It's too much. It's too much for any one person to handle. AI now might be able to, but
well, I was going to ask, how does tech kind of change this, and especially AI? But also, what are the problems?
Yeah. So the part to think about when you're starting to think about how to map this out and really understand all your risks. First, you need visibility, and that's where any technology will fail, because visibility comes from the people and the parts that you have to put together. So
say that differently.
So if the visibility comes from, let's say you're talking to the sourcing unit and they know there are 15 suppliers of your ingredients, and they know their suppliers or the alternate suppliers for all 15 of those. That's a really difficult question, and one that you can't really put down on paper easily. That's the knowledge of the people that's there that is not in any technology. But if you call up the guy who gets tomatoes in Costa Rica and you say, what happens if the crop in Chile goes down? He's going to say, oh, I'm going to call California. If they don't have it, I'm going to call Spain, because I know that about that timing, they're pretty good. And you say, okay, can I?
It's some of that tribal knowledge as well, right? So it's a little experience, because again, I keep thinking a lot about the brain drain, or they call it the silver tsunami, right? There's a big wave of people who are going to retire over the next 10 years. And there's so much that, because we didn't have the technology when we were learning. So a lot of it's here. And how do you get,
that's the thing. It's like there's not a technological solution for it yet. And when I say yet, it's because that knowledge has to be given in an electronic way for it to be into your database, let's say. So what I always encourage people to do is, like, when you have those conversations, write it down, take notes, drop it into your Google Drive folder or your Microsoft Copilot folder or whatever. So you're using your own brain. You create actually your own digital twin of yourself. And that you'll hear this term a lot, digital twin of your supply chain.
Okay, one of me is plenty, but I hear you. I understand.
Yeah. And as you create this digital twin,
I hadn't heard that before, digital twin. Okay, that's good to know.
It started in manufacturing long ago, when, like, you have a filling machine for mayonnaise, let's say, and you put a bunch of sensors on it, and you want to model that and change how it operates. You will create what's called a digital twin. It takes a year of data or whatever, and then it can look at the trends of what happens if the temperature changes by 1 degree or the fill rate changes by 2% or whatever. And you can actually model out the future state. And so you take this digital twin and you say, what if I change X? And it says Y will happen. That's what a digital twin does. And you can kind of model what a filling machine does. Well, now with the amount of data we have, we can create digital twins of whole supply chains. But in order to do that, first you have to be able to say what happens. And that's usually where most technological solutions stop. Because unless you can get that tribal knowledge from that tomato supplier that sits in Costa Rica, and that person actually can tell you why they make the decisions they make, there's no digital twin that can be formed from it.
Well, and that they actually know what they're talking about.
Actually know that, and that's part of what you have to do as a founder, as a business owner. You need to gut check that stuff and say, does this really make sense or not? And if it doesn't, ask for help from people you trust, right? So that's where you call a consultant that you trust in the US, or you fact check them against someone else who supplies tomatoes, or whatever else you can think of to do. Get the help in and say, does this make sense? If yes, okay, drop it into your database, whatever that looks like. And now with the technology we have like Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever, you can feed it a bunch of documents or meeting notes or whatever, and it'll start to learn and operate like a supply chain. There's digital tools out there now. There's one that's called Era that I've used before.
How do you spell that?
AERA.
Okay.
Era. It can look at all of the things that have happened in your supply chain with all the data that's coming in and actually suggest recommendations for changes on your supply plan. And
how accurate is it?
That's up to the person using it. So they give you lots of options, just like ChatGPT or anything else. What is difficult about it is that before it gets accurate, you have to fact check it and teach it. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, even with ChatGPT.
Yes.
It gives you an answer, and if you don't click the little reference button, it may have just made it up for you. It hallucinates, right? And
I have a friend that does a lot with an AI, and he's a consultant with a big consulting firm, and he said, literally, I end every prompt or question with, what 3 questions do you have, and do you understand? And like, it's literally sort of just pushing it on. And he said, sometimes I'll just ask it, did you make that up? And it will literally say yes.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's very honest, right? AI only lie about things it doesn't know. But if you ask it, it tells you the truth.
But it gets back to like technology is not the solution. It's part of the toolkit that you have.
Exactly. Technology.
But then that gets back to if you don't know what questions to ask. I have 2 questions for you. One is quick and one's probably a little longer. So let me start with the one that's a little longer. And that is like, talk to us about, again, everything that we're seeing going on in the world today. It feels like there's a major shift in how countries are working with another or not on, again, whether it's tariffs or open borders, what have you. What's the future of cross-border or international sourcing? Like, what's going to change over the next couple of years or decade? And what should we be looking for or preparing for?
Yep. I think the future of cross-border sourcing is more rosy than people think.
Good.
A lot of times people are stuck in the now, but cross-border sourcing is what has helped the global economy grow. Free and open trade, the countries that have it have grown faster and more effectively than those that don't. And there's many examples of this in history of when countries open their borders to free trade, the economic impact of that country grows with it. And that's both in labor and goods. And so that's why personal opinion and belief is that the opening of borders for trade will come back. Right now, it's shrinking, but it will return. And it has in history a few times. So that's why I think that global sourcing model for consumer goods and food products and all those things will come back.
Right.
And there's another aspect of like, you can't grow almonds in Chicago.
Right. This is true.
It's just not possible. So people in Chicago still want almonds.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you need to find the best place to grow food products for people. And that's not going to be in the country. So that means it's not going away. It's here for good, if we take that assumption. If it's here for good, how do we operate in the future? Well, in the future, we need to have more visibility to how these supply chains are. That question I told you and that tribal knowledge that was there, the future of the best running supply chains for cross-border sourcing, it isn't tribal knowledge anymore.
Right.
It's a modeled supply chain that can adjust quickly. And you see domestic supply chains able to adjust quickly when things go wrong. They can carry less inventory. They have
Right.
faster response times, and that helps their business in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
The global supply chains will start to get closer and closer to that type of model where it makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I
And
just think about all the ships coming from China that have been on the ocean for a couple of weeks, and then tariffs hit, and people are like, "Well, I don't want that container now," because again, it's just, but that's the here and now. So you feel comfortable that those challenges are going to work themselves out
mhm. and
because of the way the economy, the global economy works.
and let me
And we
give it
have examples in history. Okay.
let me give an example of like why it could work out. For example,
Okay.
China was this tariff went in place for China, and they saw the impact to their economy and started negotiating with Trump, right? And now the biggest tariffs are gone for a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So bring all the containers in, get them in
Right.
the US, mitigate your risk. Great. The
Right.
tariff might be back in 30 days, 90 days. Who knows? We don't know. It could come back.
Mm-hmm.
But supply chains that are winning, the people that are winning, are the ones who could react fast enough, who didn't carry all their inventory in one place, who didn't put it all in China, who didn't put it all in the US. They were
Right.
actually able to adjust their supply chains and deliver and dispatch 15 containers in one day from
Right.
China to the US so they could beat the tariff.
Right.
Those things are not going to stop. The Suez Canal issues will come back again someday. There'll be
Right.
another problem in Panama in 6 months, who knows? But the supply chains and the companies that win are the ones who understand all the risks and can react faster than any others to those issues, because growing almonds in Chicago just won't ever happen.
Right.
So where are you going to get them from?
Supply chain is a lot about mitigating risk versus it feels more to me like in some ways protectionist, where like to me sales is like all about optimism and run and like see what you can do. Um, so does that resonate with you? Does that feel like
Yeah.
the right description?
The only thing I'd change is at the end. I don't think supply chain is completely about mitigating risks. I think it's about knowing your risks, because we in supply
Interesting.
chain make decisions a lot of times to take a risk, and
Oh,
we do it
interesting.
very purposefully. For example, I've just last week made a decision to air freight some materials or some finished goods to the US to get it here as quickly as possible to try to beat some tariffs. And it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And
Right.
that's okay. That's a risk that I'm willing to take. So
Interesting.
and that's because it could be better for the business in the long run. Now,
Right.
knowing that and being able to balance that, that's what it's about in the day-to-day of supply chain. And then when you think larger strategy of supply
Mm-hmm.
chain, like first that's the day-to-day operations, then the larger strategy is about resilience,
Mm-hmm.
cost, and the consumer benefit.
Resilience, cost, and consumer benefit.
Yep. So what
Those
can
are
you deliver from the
those are
supply
great
chain, those
points.
three? Yeah. And
Interesting.
that's what makes different supply chains win. But notice that's the strategy. The day to day, you've got to
Mhm.
manage within all those, that
Right.
framework you set up for your strategy.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And as always, it was great chatting.